Hey everyone. So today we're going to look at the first lab of chapter 4. So that's going to be section 4.14, convert to reverse binary. So again, for those of you coming from Python, this may seem very familiar because indeed, we basically did uh, a version of this in Python. But just to kind of recap on this, right? So we're going to take a program, write a program that takes in a positive integer as input, and then we'll output a string of ones and zeros representing the integer in reverse binary. Um, and it gives us actually the algorithm we have to follow. So it says, as long as x is greater than 0, output x modulo 2. So again, and remember, if it's modulo 2, it's either going to be 0 if it's an even number or 1 if it's an odd number. Why did this gray out on me? It's odd. Okay, whatever. We can still see the screen. Um, the above algorithm, right, will output ones and zeros in reverse order. Sorry. And then next step is you decrement by dividing x by 2. So whatever that number is, divide by 2, and you do that. Again, one quick thing to note here, just kind of a couple notes. A little different than how we did this in Python. So first thing, again, we don't need to explicitly state that this is integer division because it's integers, right? Java is going to default to doing integer operations on integers. It will not force to floats. The next thing to note is that unlike Python, where generally our approach was sort of to construct a string and then print it as we go along, here we're just going to do a system out print as we kind of go along. Right? Remember the difference between the print versus the print lines? So just kind of as we're going through, we're just going to print it, and then when we're done, we do a print line just to kind of get it to the next line. So that's going to be, I think, maybe the key differences. Other than that, we're really just going to follow the syntax. It's going to be, we're going to modify it, obviously, for Java, but this is basically what we're just going to do. So, okay, so let's go back here, right? I mean, again, already we're importing our utility scanner library, we're creating a public class. I'll call it lab program. Again, it has a main method. It's public, it's static for the do it all right in your sleep. This next part two should be something that we should be familiar with, right? What next things we're going to do? Create a scanner object, right? First thing we're going to do. Next, initialize an integer variable, something like number, user number, whatever we want to call it, and then assign the scanner next integer to that thing, right? Again, really basically at this point done a handful of labs that basically just kind of follow that exact procedure. So again, we're going to take the scanner library, create a new scanner object, and it's going to be equal to new scanner in. Perfect. All right, so we're going to do that, and then we're going to initialize an integer thing. I'm just going to call this. We'll just call it input num. Int input num. Right, so we're going to create those. Okay. But now we're just doing assignment, right? So now put num is equal to scanner int. Right. So okay, so far so good, right? And again, muscle memory. Kind of don't even have to think about that at this point. Hopefully, think about it at this point. That's just kind of good to go. Now we get to our control flow. So this is going to be, so looking at this, obviously here it says, as long as x is greater than 0, which is just a very obviously a carefully way of saying while, right? While x is greater than 0. So that's going to be our condition here. So we're just going to use a while keyword or our condition here. So in this case, it's going to be input num. Input num is greater than 0. So not greater than or equal to greater than, right? Because as long the moment it equals 0, there's no point doing any further calculation. So it's going to be an absolute greater than 0. All right, now let's just do a code block for that. So in this case, right, so we have to sort of calculate output x modulo 2. So in this case, we can actually just sort of do the math as part of the print statement. So we don't actually have to calculate it, sign it, and print it. We can actually just sort of directly, we don't have to store it. We can just directly output the result. Let's just do a system out print statement again. Print because remember, we're going to sort of continue to print in line as we're sort of going through math, what are we going to do here? Again, it's just going to be input num2. Okay, perfect. And then, so we're just going to do that, and then we're going to decrement our input. Input num equals input num divided. And then, okay, so that's going to be sort of our while loop, and we're almost done. Once that's done, though, we, again, just to sort of bring it to a new line to complete our program, we're then going to do a print line. So system out line, and we're not going to actually print anything. Again, we're just going to sort of bring it to. So let's just run this and see how this goes. Okay, and got it on the first try. Awesome. But yeah, again, at this point in the class, we're still replicating a lot of, we're sort of retreading a lot of the ground that we already have seen in Python and some other stuff. So, a lot of these concepts are still quite familiar to us. So really, it's just a question of syntax and just kind of getting that down. And hopefully, you're beginning to get a feel for it. Obviously, as we go further, we're getting into some really, really interesting sort of novel topics and concepts. But at least for now, we're retreading some pretty well established paths. Okay, hope this was helpful, and best of luck tackling the rest of chapter 4.